On today's episode, with the offseason news starting to die down a little bit for the Chicago Blackhawks, I figured now would be a perfect time to get into my top 10 prospects list, starting today with all the players who just missed the cut and have been named honorable mentions. And then to wrap things up, per usual, to start off the week will be our Mailbag Monday fan segment. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Today is Monday, July 25th. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you can also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And I got to remind you all quickly that today's episode is sponsored by BetOnline, which is both the fastest and the easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and Vegas casino games in 2022. BetOnline, where the game begins. And if you're listening to the audio version of today's episode and you like what you're hearing, please be sure to go and show some support first by following the podcast, which will only take a quick couple of seconds. Literally, just a quick click of the button will be helping me out tremendously. Be sure to go and rate the show with 5 stars if you like what you're hearing today as well. And if you're tuning in through Apple Podcasts or through Spotify, feel free to go and leave me a review. I always greatly appreciate getting some feedback from all my tremendous listeners out there. And best of all, it's 100% for free wherever you may be listening to your podcasts, whether that be through Apple Podcasts, Odyssey, Spotify, etc. It's all 100% for free. And if you go and follow the show right now, then you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And if you're not already tuning into the video version of today's episode, then you got to be sure to go and check out Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, because each and every episode moving forward is going to have a video attached to it as well. So if you haven't done so yet, please go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. It would be a great help, folks. The numbers have been jumping up here recently. I really am thankful for all the support that I've gotten. And for those of you who haven't subscribed yet, be sure to go and do so, because it seriously would mean the world to me. Also, be sure to go and smash the like button down below as well, and comment as to who you think the Blackhawks' top prospect is in the organization right now. I want to hear this debate, whether you think it's Frank Nazar, Kevin Korchinski, if you still think it's Lucas Reichel. Be sure to let me know down below in the comment section. And last, go and ring the bell, turn on those push notifications, and that way you will be notified when the episode gets uploaded to YouTube each and every day. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your first listen here to start off your week. I hope everybody had a lovely weekend. I know I did out in South Carolina. As you all can see, though, I'm back in the Chicagoland area, back in the studio after it's been a whirlwind of in the past couple of weeks. I was in Chicago for a few days with the Blackhawks Prospect Development Camp taking place. Then I went out to South Carolina just a few days later. So it's been a lot of moving parts, but it feels good to finally be grounded back in the burbs here and back in my home. And I know all the listeners out there, this is the best audio quality in this room. I've struggled with that over the past couple of weeks from where I've been staying. It's been a little echoey. So thank you all for bearing with me through that. Also, I wanted to let you all know that I'm just having a temporary mic right now. I know I don't sound the best, but I'm still waiting on a part to come through. I have a really nice microphone setup. I have the Rode mic. I'm just waiting for another piece to come through so that I can hook it up into my laptop and get everything running. So again, for a couple of different things, thank you all for bearing with me. But happy Monday, as I said. Hope everyone had a lovely weekend. I know it stinks going back to reality on Monday, but we got a fun show on tap here today, folks, because to open things up this morning, I wanted to begin actually with the honorable mentions for my Chicago Blackhawks top 10 prospects list. And, you know, with Blackhawks Prospect Development Camp having wrapped up now just over a week and a half ago. It was fun to see all the prospects in action, a lot of them for the first time, because this was, the first time the Blackhawks were able to hold this camp since way back in 2019 due to COVID-19. So it was really fun to see a lot of the high-end prospects for the Blackhawks in action and taking part in drills and scrimmages. Also fun to see a lot of the Blackhawks beat writers and media folks as well. And with, the offseason news, I really do believe it's really going to start slowing down. I thought that was going to happen last week, but of course, all the news came out about Eddie Olczyk's departure. But with the Blackhawks seemingly pretty much done in the free agent market, I think that's pretty safe to say at this point. I do think things are really about to slow down. And by the way, I wanted to let you all know that starting next week, the Locked On Blackhawks podcast will be going down to 3 episodes a week because there's just not going to be as much news. Some weeks I'll still be posting 4, heck, maybe even 5 episodes, but I definitely wanted to give you all a heads up that, it's for the most part going to be the dead point of the offseason. So dropping down to 3 episodes starting next week, which is going to be a little bit of a nice break because I've been on 5 episodes a week since all the way back in early October. So a much needed break for yours truly coming up here. But we got some fun stuff to get into, even when it goes down to 3 episodes. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So yeah, I feel like now is a good time to kind of start getting into my yearly, bi-yearly, I would say, Blackhawks top 10 prospects list. I think the last time I did this was, maybe I do it 3 times a year. Yeah, I actually think I do, because I did it at the end of the regular season last year, and I believe I did it at the midway point. So I'll probably do another one again right around, like the All-Star break, or sometime probably in January or February will be my next list. But like I said, with this being kind of the dead part of the summer, I feel like now is a pretty good time to start getting into the list. But on today's show, I'm not going to be getting into any of my actual top 10. What I usually do, for those of you newer listeners, the longtime listeners will probably know this, but I also like to start with my honorable mentions here, especially this year where the Blackhawks obviously had 11 selections in the 2022 NHL draft. And since Kyle Davidson has taken over, they're really focused on building out that prospect pool. It's been really thin over the past couple of years. So it's kind of refreshing to have a lot of names on the honorable mentions list. This could basically be a top 20 as well, but I like sticking it down to top 10 and then just adding these guys as honorable mentions. So these are the players who were just on the outside of the cut. As I start to go through more and more names, the further and further away they are going to be from cracking the top 10. So starting things off, the number 1 player in my honorable mentions, if I had a number 11, it would be this guy. I'm going with Sam Rinzel, of course, the 3rd first-round pick that the Blackhawks had in the 2022 NHL draft. They made a deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs to take on Peter Mrazek's contract in order to get back into the first round. I know there's a lot of debate going around about that deal and the Blackhawks letting Kyle Dubas get off easy and not taxing him enough to get to move that type of contract that Peter Mrazek had. Regardless of how you feel about it, Sam Rinzel is someone who I personally am really excited about. And in a couple of years here, he certainly could be a player that finds himself, in the top 5 of this list. The reason why I have him as an honorable mention really is because he's still kind of a question mark at this point of his development process. Was one of the younger players in the 2022 draft, just finished his junior year of high school in Minnesota. Got a little bit of action with the Waterloo Blackhawks of the USHL towards the end of last year, but he just doesn't have a lot of experience against higher end competition. And also, this kid's basically just about to be a senior in high school. You don't really know what he's going to be, and it's going to be a few years until we get a better idea of exactly how he's going to pan out. So before that happens, it is still a little bit hard to project what type of player Sam Rinzel is going to be, and that's why I left him in the honorable mentions list here. But like I said, he's one of those guys that has the room to grow and be near the top in just a couple of years because he has a lot of the raw tools that you want to see from a project. He's a big 6'4" right-handed shot who can skate very well. You don't see a lot of that in the modern day NHL. 6'4", can skate like a deer. That's probably his best asset, honestly. Has confidence when the puck is on his stick and can make things happen in the offensive zone. A lot of the raw tools Sam Rinzel already possesses. It's just about seeing how he can use those to his advantage against better competition and how he develops in the coming years. So he's still a little bit of a project, like I said. He's going back to the Waterloo Blackhawks of the USHL this year, and then will join on with the Minnesota Golden Gophers for the 2023-2024 season. So it's going to be a little bit until we see Sam Rinzel turn pro. It could be, 3, 4, maybe even 5 years away. But I'm very excited about this kid. He has a really good makeup, and if all goes well, he has the potential to be, a top pairing or second pairing right-handed defenseman that can make a difference in all areas on the ice. The next player I had on my honorable mentions list, he actually checked in at number 7 following the conclusion of the regular season. I think I made this list back in May. Got bumped down a little bit because of what the Blackhawks did in the 2022 NHL draft, but I'm still very excited about his future. And that's Colton Dach, of course, the brother of Kirby, who was recently traded to the Montreal Canadiens. Sure was a little bit uncomfortable for Colton to come to Chicago for development camp just a couple of days after his brother was traded. But he said all the right things, had a positive attitude, and he really, he said that it's his era, it's his time. It's not going to be, he didn't say overshadowed by Kirby, but now it's, his organization. Like, he's not going to have the comparisons of being Kirby's younger brother anymore. It's time for him to make his own legacy here with the Blackhawks. And I did like what I saw out of Colton at development camp. He's a big kid, 6'4", already 200 pounds, same build as Kirby. I think he does have the potential to be a power forward at the NHL level, maybe a second, third liner. And I think one of his best assets, maybe his best asset, is the shot that he has many times throughout the week. Ringing shots, bar down, going glove high over the goaltenders. The shot and the power that he has in it is really remarkable. And I think that's something that could really help his offensive game at the next level, because the playmaking and the speed, I'm not so sure how that's going to translate with the NHL only getting faster and faster. But I think you can bank on Colton Dach having a much better shot than his older brother Kirby. And that might be, the best part of his game. He might just be a pure goal scorer in the NHL for the Blackhawks one day. But we'll see how he's going to develop. He has to go back to Kelowna, I'm pretty sure. Can't go professional and join the Rockford Ice Hogs. So hopefully he has another big season with the Rockets. He was well over a point per game this past year. And who knows, maybe he can work on that speed and his playmaking abilities. If he's able to do that, then I really think that would help his upside, because that's probably the biggest knack on Colton right now, is whether or not he's going to be able to keep up at the NHL level. Another guy who I have on my honorable mentions up near the top, closer to the top 10, is Ethan Del Mastro, 4th round pick of the Blackhawks in the 2021 NHL draft. Already signed his entry-level contract. Actually, someone I was fortunate enough to interview here on Locked On Blackhawks before starting last season as the captain of the Mississauga Steelheads. A really good kid, said a lot of good things, got some good experience as well with Team Canada. And he had a big year with Mississauga, and it kind of, I think, caught the Blackhawks by surprise, because when they drafted him, they picked him to be a sturdy, big shutdown defenseman. I mean, that's still the name of his game. He's a big kid. You could tell he likes to use his size to his advantage in the dirty areas, bangs well along the boards, also has really good poise in the defensive zone. So in his own zone, I really think Ethan Del Mastro has the potential to be a very sound defenseman one day. And he also put up really respectable offensive numbers with Mississauga this year and took a stride in that part of his game as well. And that's the part that caught the Blackhawks by surprise. I don't think they even knew that he had, this much offense in his arsenal. Not to say that he's going to be a point per game defenseman at the NHL level or anything, but it looks like he's going to be able to contribute in some way, shape, or form on the back end. So I'm really excited about Ethan Del Mastro and the physical presence that he provides on the blue line, and someone that's kind of slowly creeping up the prospect rankings each and every time that I see him. The more I see him, the more I like this kid. So I do think Ethan Del Mastro as a 4th-round pick could have an NHL future one day for the Blackhawks, and that's why he's up near the top of my honorable mentions this summer. All right, folks, that's going to take care a couple of the higher name honorable mentions that I have on my top 10 prospects list. Coming up in just a moment, I will continue to get into some other names as we move down a little bit. But first, I got to talk to you all about BetOnline. It's that time of the year again, folks, as baseball season has finally taken over for the summer, and BetOnline has way more odds and info, from game scores, totals, player performance props, to who the next fired manager is going to be. Regardless of what you want to bet on, BetOnline remains the number one spot for all sports betting here in 2022. It's not just baseball. From golf, esports, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, do not wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is both the fastest and the easiest way to bet on your favorite sports and Vegas casino games. BetOnline, where the game begins. All right, we're back here on Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Carrying over from segment 1, let's get into a couple more of the honorable mentions for my Blackhawks top 10 prospects list. The next guy I have here is Landon Slaggert, who's been playing for the University of Notre Dame the past couple of years. Had a little bit of a disappointing sophomore season, I would say, just because his freshman season, he put up really strong offensive numbers and wasn't able to produce at the same clip this past season. But I do think more so for Slaggert, it's about the all-around game. The 200-foot game that he plays provides physicality, kind of like sandpaper, hard to play against, not afraid to get up in your face, go to the dirty areas, a good back checker. I think the 200-foot game is more so going to be Landon Slaggert's the best part of Landon Slaggert's game, more so than just the offense. So seeing the numbers take a bit of a dip for the Fighting Irish this year, that's not the end of the world to me. And at Blackhawks Prospect Development Camp, I thought he had a really strong showing. A big kid, knows what to do when the puck is on his stick as well, but he's still just as effective without it. And I think he's one of those guys who, maybe a power play 2 guy, but I feel more confident that if he's going to make the NHL, it's going to be as a penalty killer because of what he's able to do defensively as well. So maybe a 3rd liner, best case scenario, 2nd liner, but I feel bottom 6 is a little bit more likely for Landon Slaggert, but I do like the way that he plays. He's got some speed to him as well. A good makeup that the Blackhawks need more of, honestly, throughout their organization. They address that a little bit here in this 2022 draft class, which I think is important because Landon Slaggert, prior to that, was one of the few guys that provided that type of game, especially at forward in the Blackhawks prospect pool. Another guy I got is defenseman Jakob Galvis, who a lot of Blackhawks fans clinged on to in a hurry when he came up to the NHL last year. Had a couple of different stints, but in each of them, he looked really sharp. And, maybe he doesn't have any skills that are going to wow you or jump off the charts, but a very solid all-around game, good in transition, good first pass, doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes, and is responsible in his own end. We also got to see him on the power play as well, move the puck, and was aggressive with it on his stick. So I wouldn't count Jakob Galvis out. I know there are a lot of defensemen in the Blackhawks prospect pool now trying to make that step to the next level. Jakob Galvis kind of gets forgotten about sometimes, but I do think he's one of those value pieces that you could have. Like, maybe he's not an everyday NHLer, but a fringe guy that you can trust when he has to jump in the lineup. So I certainly wouldn't count Jakob Galvis out because one of those guys as well. Every time I see him, I get more and more impressed. And I actually remember Blackhawks development camp back in 2019. He was one of the guys that really caught my eye. So it's cool to see him, starting to step on the scene a little bit as he's trying to crack the NHL level permanently this upcoming season, which is going to be hard for him to do. But he shocked us before, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the mix once again this upcoming season. Another guy I got, another defenseman, Nolan Allen, 2021 first-round pick. He's a little bit of a toughie because I didn't think he had a very good showing at Blackhawks Prospect Development Camp, even for the size that he had. And that's supposed to be one of his biggest assets is his physique and how he's able to use it on the defensive side of things. And I just didn't see a whole lot of plays where he excelled and really thrived and had a good first pass and was able to, skate the puck out of traffic or anything. And the defensive abilities, that's supposedly why the Blackhawks drafted Nolan Allen in the first round. And I just don't see it. Just don't see him. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't see him. I know it was the last pick in the first round, so essentially a second rounder, but I don't even know if he's going to live up to that hype. I do have my concerns about Nolan Allen, but to be fair, it wasn't a good showing at development camp, but I thought he did look better when he was around in training camp last fall. So we'll see how the development process goes. He is someone that's a little bit hard to gauge because there's not a lot of offense there. But he knows that. The Blackhawks know that. That's not the reason they drafted him. It's all about what he's able to do in his own zone, how he's able to read plays and get the puck out of harm's way whenever he's on the ice. So we'll see how he works on that. But I definitely wasn't impressed enough by Nolan Allen to put him in my top 10 or even near the top of my honorable mentions list. Who do I got next? My phone locked on me. Next, I have Paul Ludwinski, the first second-round pick that the Blackhawks had in the 2022 NHL draft. I think he's got some good wheels, good 200-foot game. Didn't really see much offensively at development camp, but I do think, kind of like Landon Slaggert, he's one of those guys that can make an impact in various different ways. And, maybe the offense will come around. Maybe I'm wrong, but he can play in all situations, and I think that's why the Blackhawks took him so early. They liked how he was well-rounded, and I feel like his floor is a little bit higher than other players because he's above what he's able to do without the puck on his stick. Another player from the 2022 draft I have in here is Samuel Savoie, who Blackhawks fans are going to love if he makes the NHL one day. I don't think he's ever going to be a gifted offensive player, but he is scrappy. He's physical. He'll get up on you. I mean, he was getting in people's faces at development camp. These are guys who he's going to call teammates one day. Imagine what he's going to do to the opponents. And smile on his face, loves getting under people's skin, kind of like an Andrew Shaw role. So if Savoie's able to keep developing his game and keep working on the speed and the other things to crack the NHL level, I think there's always going to be a role for him because of how scrappy and almost annoying he is out there on the ice. You need those guys, especially come Stanley Cup playoff time, to get guys off of their game. And we've seen that in the past happen to a lot of big name players. They just have these guys trying to get under their skin. That feels like Sammy Savoie. So I'm excited to see how things are going to go for this kid in the next couple of years. A late round pick, 7th round pick that I have in here, Jalen Luypen from the Edmonton Oil Kings. Had a really strong season with them, a dominant Oil Kings team, and put up some really respectable offensive numbers. He's got some good skating. He's got good skating ability as well. My only concern is the size. Luypen is a very small kid. But I think, it's worth giving him a contract to see what he has, especially, I know the Blackhawks addressed this in this year's draft, but still kind of a thin forward prospect pool. So I think Jalen Luypen is someone the Blackhawks fans shouldn't forget about. And as a 7th round pick, there could be something there. I've definitely seen worse 7th round picks in my days. The last honorable mention that I have, Blackhawks fans, is Michael Tepley, someone who has found his way on my prospects list ever since the Hawks drafted him back in 2019. Had a really good second half of the season down with the Rockford Ice Hogs. It was literally a tale of two halves for Michael Tepley. He was dog water in the first half and was getting scratched. And then in the second, he finds himself on the top line with Lucas Reichel and Andre Alti-Barmakian, and they're absolutely thriving. That's the Michael Tepley that I've been seeing throughout the years, was the Tepley that showed up in the second half for Rockford. And I do think he has potential, especially for a fourth-round pick, a good later-round snag by the Blackhawks. I like Michael Tepley's game, and I think he's going to get another good opportunity to showcase his stuff down with the Rockford Ice Hogs once again this season. All right, folks, I think that takes care of all the honorable mentions I had for my Chicago Blackhawks top 10 prospects list. Coming up in just a minute, I still have to get into our weekly Mailbag Monday fan segment. Welcome back to the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. I'm your host, Jack Bushman, getting into segment 3 now. As always, to start off the week, I got to pull up the questions real quick because I wasn't prepared. But as always, to start off the week, it's time for our Mailbag Monday fan segment, where I answer a question from a couple of lucky listeners right here on Locked On Blackhawks. The first question I wanted to answer today, it's going to be a bit of a lengthy answer because the question was from J18 Hawk fan, who asked, based on the current Hawks roster, what do you project the opening night 4 forward lines and 3 defensive pairings are going to be? I actually talked about this, I think, on a show last week. I had a way too early depth chart for the Blackhawks, but I'll get into it once again. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I already gave a whole segment to this not that long ago. But for the Blackhawks, I think the top line, my top line that I had, I think you got to pair Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane together now. I mean, who else is going to be the top center? So I had Andreas Athanasiou, Jonathan Toews, and Patrick Kane as my top line. The second line, I had Max Domi, Tyler Johnson, and Taylor Radish. The third line, I had Colin Blackwell, Sam Lafferty, and Philip Kurashev. That was my third line. Also, this is these lines are with the impression that Lucas Reichel is going to begin the year with the Rockford Ice Hogs. Unless he wows at training camp and gives the Blackhawks coaching staff absolutely no choice, I do think he's going to begin in Rockford. There's obviously no rush in the pipelines right now. The Blackhawks are going to be very patient with their higher end prospects. So for that reason, unless Reichel wows, I do think he's going to begin with the Ice Hogs. So that's why I don't have him here in the opening night lines. But yeah, third line, I have Colin Blackwell, Sam Lafferty, and Philip Kurashev. And then the fourth line, I think, could be interesting. We could see Boris Kachuk, Reese Johnson, and Mackenzie Entwistle like we saw for a lot of the second half of the season down the stretch. But there's a couple other guys in there that you can't forget about as well. Mike Hardman is someone who's going to be pushing for an NHL roster spot. We also could see Josiah Slavin. He got some NHL time last year. Michael Tepley is someone who's going to be knocking on the door. Dylan Sakura, who the Blackhawks brought back again, will probably be a fringe guy. So those are probably the players who are going to be fighting for those last couple of roster spots. I think, with the Blackhawks focusing on the youth, I wouldn't be surprised to see Kachuk, Reese Johnson, and Entwistle, begin as the fourth line. They all got extensions, and I think there was a reason for that. I think that the Blackhawks would like to keep those players together and could potentially be the fourth line of the future for this organization. But if that's not it, I could see Dylan Sakura pushing for a roster spot, although I don't know how much the Blackhawks would rather give him a place in the lineup over some young players. So maybe Michael Tepley, Josiah Slavin is someone who could be pushing Jakubpor and Evan Barrett as well. Those are guys who are kind of on the outside looking in terms of the forward lines for next season. On defense for the Blackhawks, I think this is a little bit more set in stone. Top pairing, I think we could see Jake McCabe and Seth Jones once again. On the second pairing, we're going to see Connor Murphy there. It's going to be interesting to see who he's going to be paired with, whether it's going to be Caleb Jones or Riley Stillman. I think both those two players are locks to make the NHL roster. And those 5 defensemen, I think, are, assuming they're all healthy, are locks to be in the lineup opening night for the Blackhawks when they take on the defending Stanley Cup champion, Colorado Avalanche, which should be a whole lot of fun. The real question mark for the Blackhawks defense is who's going to be in that 6th and final spot. Is it going to be Ian Mitchell? Is it going to be Alex Vlasic? Is it going to be Alec Regula? I think those are the top 3 candidates to round out the defense for the Blackhawks. And among those 3, it's going to be interesting to watch them during training camp because they're all going to be fighting for the same job. And if I had to give an edge to one guy right now, I'd probably go with Ian Mitchell because the Blackhawks could use another right-handed defenseman back there. So I think Mitchell could have a leg up because of that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Regula stay in that mix, another right-handed defenseman too. And Alex Vlasic, I think he impressed the most out of all of those 3. I know Mitchell didn't really get much NHL action last year, but I thought Vlasic was the most impressive of any of those 3. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him crack the opening night roster as well. But I think that's kind of the biggest question for the Blackhawks in training camp is which young defenseman is going to get that final spot on the 3rd defensive pairing. All right, folks, I think that is going to wrap up Monday, July 25th's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks right now, wherever you get your podcasts, and go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, and you'll be able to get the latest episode as soon as it comes out each day. And after the show, be sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast for all the latest news and updates regarding the NHL offseason. It's free and available on all platforms, so be sure to go and check out Locked On NHL right now, wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, thank you for tuning into today's episode. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you can also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And for any questions at all regarding anything related to the show or to the Blackhawks, feel free to email lockdownblackhawks@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on any one of my Twitter accounts, or you could call 708-653-0572 to leave a voicemail. So until tomorrow's episode, thanks again for tuning into the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.